You need to unmute.
Hi, hello.
How are you doing?
I was muted.
That is the problem with going
Hello.
live, isn't it?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hello Money Club week. Everybody, welcome to the Hello Money Club live this week. So to let us know where you're watching from, today's topic is about something that we cannot talk about enough. Me and Trevor have been talking about this topic a lot of time, about the time and presence mindset. So me and Trevor, we are hosts with Hello Monday Club. We are a boutique consultancy and a network for future work leaders. So basically everybody in a leadership position who is involved in workplace transformation and organizational development. Me and Trevor have been talking for almost 2 years, probably every week, about the future of work, about things that we've been seeing happening in the world of work. We are both very interesting. We have been talking about this a lot, and this year we decided to do that live on LinkedIn for everybody here, from the community, our audience, and other people to join the conversation. So please put your comments in, say hi, and make this an interactive session.
I think actually our time and present mindset. Yeah, I mean, I think our challenge is going to be that we tend to get kind of quite annoyed when we talk about time and presence mindset, and I think our challenge for today, bearing in mind we've only got half an hour, is not to turn it into some kind of big rant, I suppose. That's certainly in the past when we've talked about this, that has been our challenge. So it's even more true when we're doing a live broadcast. And you seem to be cutting out slightly.
I seem to have some with my connection, so yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I hope the connection will stabilize quite soon. So time and present mindset. Yeah, we did make a little bit of a structure for this chat because it could be a rant, it could go all over the place. So what I will talk about is like what is the time and present mindset, why we think it is problematic, how companies will change this way of thinking in the next 10 years, and how to change this mindset in your own company or even for yourself. So anybody watching, like if you have an idea about the time and presence mindset, just please in the comments what you think about it. So how would you describe it, Trevor?
I was going to hand that to you. I can't believe you've done that to me. Because I think a lot of the time we talk about it, and our challenge is that people don't necessarily know what it is, although they know what the words mean. And what we've been exploring, I suppose, with an awful lot of our clients is this idea that when they think about the world of work and when they think about what they value in the workplace, so if you're employing someone, what you're actually employing them to do, and what is in their contract is often not what the informal agreement is. And that informal agreement, as well as their actual contract of employment, often emphasizes this idea of where are they going to be? So that's the presence mindset. And in a virtual environment, that's really like, how often am I going to see them? How often am I going to get a sense that they're around and they're doing work? And then the time component of that is, well, what time are they giving me? I'm kind of paying them for their time. And their contribution is directly proportionate to the amount of time they give to me as an employer or me as a manager. And this is what we're going to get onto, but both of those things are distinctly problematic. But one of the issues we've got with dealing with the fact they're problematic is they're so ingrained in the mindset, particularly the Western mindset, but pretty much the whole world. When we think about work, we are so instinctively focused on time and presence that we find it very, very challenging to think about anything else.
Yeah, this is also why I call it a mindset, why we call it specifically goodbye to the virtual, because time and present mindset, it's exactly as you describe it. And I always say we are programmed to think like that. Yeah. We are programmed to think like work needs to be 8 hours, it needs to be done from 9 to 5, unless you are irregular, because this is the regular business hours. And it used to be at a certain place in a certain building, and now we are more or less allowed to work from different places outside the office, but we are expecting our employees to log on from 9 to 5, and even if they're doing home office.
Yeah.
So, is there a storm entering? I was just hearing a lot of noise. So, yeah, and because what you say, it's also the underlying motive is that we used to sell time in a factory setting. So that was like, you have to be there, you are showing up, and I'm selling you my time as a laborer. And in that time, there is like all this employer-employee relationship that is bringing us that kind of inequality, where is a power balance. And that all changed since we started to have a knowledge workers. And now we're working in a world with a lot of technology, where we ask people to be innovative, and where we ask people to be creative. But we expect them to do that in that 9 to 5 time slot, and also that 8 hour time slot. So can you explain also what do you think is the most problematic thing if we keep on thinking in that virtual time and present mindsets?
Well, I think we've got to the point now where you can see the kind of chinks in the armor, because that world, that factory mindset, everyone was equally qualified. Everyone had the same level of expertise, and so you literally were just paying to have them in a place, moving one widget from another or doing something, and that mindset is starting to break down. So you can see, even if someone's doing manual labor, so they're not necessarily a knowledge worker, but they're doing manual labor, if they have a qualification or they have a specific skill or expertise that means that they do something that is less common, that is more rare, they get paid more money. And that makes perfect sense, because the value that they bring is different. So we've already started, even in some of the jobs that we know are challenging and are kind of stuck in that time present mindset, we're starting to see change. What's scary is that when we talk about knowledge workers, and I think at the top of this tree, the top of the problem tree, is creative knowledge workers, we haven't seen any migration. And I really do think that one of the problems we've got is that people are so used to this belief that your output is consistent across the time that you give to your employer. And that belief, I think, underpins, which is wrong, by the way, that many studies have shown that. So I think that belief is one of the things that we could start to chip away at, and that would in turn then start to bring down the time and presence mindset issue.
Yes, that's really spot on. Well said. That consistent output
Thank you.
over that 8 hours. It's really good to realize that, to step back and to think about, what is the most productive time? Are people really thriving? Are they really being able to do their best work if we keep on expecting them to work 8 hours? And this also connects to well-being. So if we are now in this more remote and agile world, and people have their own needs, because working from home, flexible schedules, having an opportunity to work hybrid, that will start asking, emphasize a little bit more a different work-life integration. And if you keep on insisting that 8 hour, and I think you said it in the last LinkedIn Live, that also in your last job, you would take your own freedom to pick up your kids from school and then work later, because people need that. So we see people doing that even in organizations where it's not formalized to do so, because it is so much something that we need. But as you also said, you would feel guilty about it. And that and this is another thing, that 8 hour time and present mindset, it comes with guilt. And it's deeply ingrained in our values that our parents have been teaching us. So I'm an entrepreneur for many years. I'm specialized in the future of work. I know all the studies, and so I feel guilty for not working, my 8 hours a day. And then I just really have to check in with myself and think, no, this is ridiculous. But it is so deeply, we are so much programmed in to be expected to do those times. And even like a friend of mine, he's like, oh yeah, I'm not making all my hours. I'm not able to meet all my hours. And I was like, and is there a problem? He's like, no, because my manager knows that I am meeting my results. and my manager was happy. And she was doing work from home and homeschooling, but had a 3-year-old. And I was like, why is this a problem? She was like, yeah, because I feel guilty. I need to make my hours that I'm getting paid for. And it keeps on. It's so deeply ingrained. And if you start to see that and notice that, you can see it through everything. And I want to move to the next, like, what is going to happen in the next 10 years in that area, because this is where it gets interesting, of course. So I think that there will be first of all, more slowly change in that area, but then at one point there will be a tipping point. That is probably more farther in the future than I expect it to be, because if you already see it, you expect people to pick up on that development, but in reality things take more time to change. So how do you see that happening, Trevor?
Well, one of the ways that, and what you were just saying kind of reinforces, one of the ways that I think about the time presence mindset is like a shared delusion. So like everyone's sort of bought into it and they all believe it. And as long as everyone keeps believing in it, then we'll end up with everyone sort of continuing it. And so I think what's started to happen now is that people are starting to see through that delusion. That might sound a bit dramatic, but because it is such a mindset, I really genuinely think it behaves more like that kind of group delusion. So if we have just a few people, I mean, the example I gave where I still felt that guilt, I was able over time to get rid of that. And I was only able to make the decisions about how I ran my workday because I knew my value. So I think one thing that's going to really help is the fact that it is becoming a lot more of a talent economy, particularly in the knowledge worker space. So they're going to realize that they have more power and they can start to ask for things. And the employer won't reasonably, or the employer or manager or leader or whatever, won't reasonably be able to say no, because they'll be able to achieve their results, or at least have no impact on their results. So when they realize that, that will start to drive it. And all it needs is a number of people to start to push at the current mindset, the current delusion around time and presence, for everyone to start realize that it is a shared delusion, and that they can start to ask, or actually they can just start to behave. They can stop asking. They can just start behaving as though their value is derived from what their outcomes are, not the amount of time they spend in their work. Perhaps it's a bit strong, but I think the word delusion, for me anyway, kind of describes it. And I'm hoping that some of the people here listening kind of go, yeah, I'm bought into that. I believe that. And I'm not sure why I believe that, but I've always believed that. And as soon as you've got people saying that, it starts to crumble down a little bit.
Exactly. And it's interesting. So people moving to a results-driven workplace. So I saw as a job advertisement, there was somebody was like hiring his first hire. And he had given a lot of thought and great intention. So he said, well, I don't think people should be working 40 hours. So what you'll be doing, within the 40-hour contract, you will have 2 hours for studying, 4 hours for exercise, and you will have 3 hours for something else. And I was like, you are still like, it's a great intention, but it is still inside that concept of a time present mindset.
Yeah.
And people giving this idea, like, you see something on LinkedIn people saying, oh, well, if somebody gets their results in 32 hours, who gets that? Who has the right on that spare 8 hours? And I was just like, it's basically non-existent. Those hours are non-existent, because you are talking about the results. So if you're really talking about the results, it doesn't matter. Hours time is really out of the equation totally. And that's even a step further. So you can see, and I do think that companies will, people will be challenging the beliefs, saying stuff like, okay, but I do get all my results. People will be taking a little bit more freedom, especially since they start to move into this remote hybrid work from home, more flexible. I go in the morning, I spend some time work from home. I come to the office for some meetings in the afternoon. And then, you will see that people start to, structure their life a little bit more like, so that instead of that, like, okay, my life is structured around this 8-hour workday plus those 2 hours commute, 2 to 4 hours commute. It will be a little bit more, okay, my work is going to be a little bit more flexible. My life is going to be a little bit more important because, I'm going to take this time for daycare, for exercise. skip this commute 3 times a week. So it will be like a graduate scale, but then at one point people will start to change that mindset. And especially, as you say, in this economy where you also have like up to 50% freelancers in the US. So more and more people will be freelancer, contractor, people will be hired more in a temporary distributed setup. So I think attention to that 8-hour mindset will just diminish over time.
Yeah.
And then that will probably bring some gradual change. And companies also that understand this and start to do this intentionally, they will have a head start on other companies, because it's also about it's talent driven, the new world of work.
Yeah, and I also think, you know, we focus on, and our selling point, I think, when we talk to businesses, is start to focus on the outcomes that you're looking for in your business in order to shift yourself away, because you can almost shift. Every team can shift away from time and presence mindset, even if the organization hasn't. So when we talk to managers and leaders, we kind of go, right, focus on outcomes. How can you describe your outcomes? And not just in numerical ways we talked about in our last LinkedIn Live. Also, what does it achieve for the client? What does it achieve for the customer? And if you're achieving those things and you find a creative way of doing it that you can do it in 3 hours, but the company has valued this as a full-time job, then great, you get paid for that. It's unlikely, but you could. And I think, so as you start to refocus on those outcomes, we'll also start to see, if we take that guy's job advert as an example, hopefully limited just to, you know, inherent business value, but also to ensuring that the individual themselves is the best version of themselves they can be, which happens to be psychologically and physically, you know, well. And I think it's almost like there's going to be a joining of different things. We talked about, and I wrote an article recently about tearing up the psychological contract. And as those things come together, there just won't be any place for a time and presence mindset, because it will just get in the way of describing things in the way that are really important, both for the employer and the employee. It will just be, you know, it'll be noise that people won't need anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, and I do think that I'm interesting. Like, if we would have this same conversation, the same topic in 5 years from now, like, you know, what would be the current status? I do like.
Makes me worried. If I'm honest.
I think there will be so I think there will be a shift. You know, there will be companies very much ahead, and then, you know, there will be people that, you know, where that mindset is still very present, and obviously there will still be a lot of jobs where the time and present mindset is valid. You know, like, you know, you want to be in a restaurant, you want the staff to be there in during the opening times. I'm not talking about those. This is obvious. You know, we talk about this obviously in creative knowledge work, people that are creative. I do also think that the focus on making sure the employee is their best version of themselves, because that is basically key for everything that we say. We are making sure this person is doing their best work, so they are thriving and the organization is thriving. Both of us should be thriving. And if you can embed that in your management style, in your culture, in everything that you do as an organization, you will create something beautiful that is, you know, that whole time. You have to be here from 9 to 5 in the office. It wouldn't even exist. It wouldn't even think. People wouldn't think like that anymore, because, you know, and what can you do as a company? So companies will pick this up and say, well, I think I do understand why we have these belief systems, and I think I understand why it's important for us to change it. Well, you can change it today. You can start today. So what is your tip for people to start changing that mindset for themselves and also in their organization?
I think one thing you can do, I don't know if it's a tip, but I think it's a really good starting point, is to start to think a little bit more experimentally. And, you know, lots of organizations do this around their tech stack, or they do this around, you know, their projects or something like that. But I think having a slightly more experimental mindset and having a grown-up conversation with your team or your employees that says, we want to try something out, and we're not going to make any promises, but we really think this could work, and we think it could work for you, and we think it could work for us. So can we give it a go without any expectation that it has to stay like this, and we're going to have a really open and grown-up conversation about it? And if targets aren't being met, you'll know about it, and we'll be really open about the data. So I think just treating people like grown-ups as a starting point, and cultivating that mindset of treating people like grown-ups, and then adding to that a really open and transparent experimental approach. You could call it an experimental mindset, but an experimental approach, the willingness to give things a go. Because the reality is, people are not checking the number of hours that are in their contract every day. I think, I haven't known how many my actual contracted hours are. I could probably take a guess because there was a sort of expectation I'd be there 9 to 5. But I never actually knew what my contracted hours were for probably my last 3 employers, and nor did my line manager, because they didn't care. But they did have a sort of expectation that I was in the office and a sort of expectation I was around for certain hours. So if you start to move things, no one's going to start tapping the contract on the table and say, but you didn't hit this, this, and this. That's actually very unusual. It's, when things have gone badly wrong. So as long as things are okay, you can experiment, and it's all right, and nothing's going to crash. It will be all right.
Yes. So, and also want to add that, so if you say, basically what you say, if as long as everything is all right, so what you might see happen around you is that as soon as there is another problem, underlying problem, people will start to fall back on that time and present mindset.
True.
So I got this example of a senior manager, like, and this is already years ago. We had like flexible working was introduced in that company, and he actually came to me, the senior manager, and he said, like, so don't we have like rules about people being in the office at 8:30 in the morning? Is that not in the handbook? And I was like, well, no, not necessarily, because he was like, well, because I want this person to be in the office at 8:30 in the morning, because he shows up at 10, and it annoys me. And I was like, okay, can you just sit down? So I invited him to sit down. I gave him some coffee, and I was like, so please, let's just explain what is the actual problem that you're trying to solve here. And so I poked a little bit further, and the idea was, he was the senior manager in hierarchy, but he didn't really have access to the results, because the actual person that was seeing the results was somebody else in the organization. So it is kind of like, if you don't really see what the results are that somebody is achieving, and you feel, you need to manage this person, and you feel that responsibility, then we have not learned any other way than managing on time and presence.
Yeah.
Because that was the job of a manager for over 100 years.
Exactly.
So it is a very good question. So as soon as we talk about people need to be in the office, people need to work certain hours, I want to know when the people are online, then the question that you should ask as a future work leader, and everybody's watching that is a future work leader, is what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve here? It's a really good question.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah,
you're so right. You're so right. And I guess that employee will probably never know how grateful they are to you for stepping in and saying what problem you're actually trying to solve, because that guy coming in late is not the problem. You just have no idea whether he's performing or not. That's the real issue. And I suspect getting good metrics in place, but also getting brave around the things that are hard to measure is going to be another component of making that shift.
Exactly. Other question is, what you could ask yourself is, like, if this person was a freelancer, what would we ask from them? What would we expect from them? Because suddenly, if somebody is doing the exact same work but as a freelancer, it's totally fine if you don't know what the hours are. So these are little things to test. And also, what I would like to, another thing that is very simple, you can do it for yourself as an individual, but if you would do it as a team, even better. And that is to design your ideal week. Like, how, what time would you get up? What would you be doing if you were totally free to create that? So it's a very good exercise that we've been doing also with teams and with clients. You can do it for yourself. And then you can also take that in your hand, and you can, even as an individual employee watching this and saying, okay, I think, it's very much embedded in my organization. My manager is in that time and present mindset, but I think I need something else. Then you can go to your manager and you can say, can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? This would be the way that I would be thriving, and I believe I would get to better results if I get this autonomy to work like this, to have my day like this. And if I'm going to hit these results, are you going to be happy not knowing how many hours I actually put in? And it's a conversation. There needs to be some safety, of course, psychological safety for you to have that conversation.
Exactly.
But I do think that both teams and managers can do that. If you're a manager, then you could also sit down with your team. And as a manager, I would recommend you to adopt, like, your main priority is to make sure that that person is doing their best work, and as you say, psychologically, physical well-being, health, and delivering results. So
Yeah.
if you start to focus on those two things, as we say, so this is something you can start doing really even today. um, you start focusing on that, and then you will make that start in that mindset shift.
I think that's so true. And just to give you one kind of anecdote, I sat down with a team member once, and they were really, really stressed, and they had a lot of complaints about the team's not running, and there's too much work, and again, going back to that kind of what's the problem we're trying to fix. So I sat down with them, and she was sort of talking about how stressed she was, and I went, well, let's just talk about what your week looks like, and let's kind of just, maybe you don't need my help in thinking about well-being, but let's just talk about your week, and let's talk about how it's structured at the moment and what we can do. And she immediately went, well, obviously I have to get in at 9 o'clock and I have to finish. And so in that time, and I went, no, I'm saying let's just talk about your whole week. I mean, you don't have to talk to me about it, but why don't we talk about your entire week and how work fits in with that and how we can make it happen? And the net result wasn't a huge shift, but it was one day where she came in the middle of the day, because it was, still quite location dependent. And it took so long for me to shift her mindset, and my mindset wasn't exactly there, but it took so long for me to shift her mindset. And that was one conversation with one employee.
Exactly.
And so it just goes to show how this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, we think we should adapt a 10-year mindset time frame for this.
Yeah. When you said 5 years.
Yeah, well, if 5 years, we'll have this conversation, and we'll see if we're kind of halfway.
Exactly.
Maybe half of the organization shifted, but in 10 years from now, I think the real change we might see in 10 years from now, where we'll be like, yeah, that was like 10 years ago, but that really changed.
Yeah.
As senior leaders and HR leaders that we work a lot with it, Hello Monday Club, of course, you can start with adapting that mindset in your own team. But I think as a CEO, as a leader, you are leading by example. As an HR director, you are leading by example. So for what you can do to change that in your company, reflect on yourself, and also what are you showing. Obviously, we still have to put in sometimes a lot of work to get the results that we want. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
Yeah.
But you can also start showing as a CEO that work doesn't necessarily have to be done between 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. And you can start showing, and you can start encouraging, especially results driven and well-being, if you put that really high on the agenda in your organization. Both HR, we have some well-being directors, people that are specifically responsible for well-being, also in our community. And those people will be a very playing a key role in changing that mindset.
I'm going to go further. I'm going to say, if you have responsibility for well-being, this is number one.
Yeah.
Like, forget lunchtime yoga, forget mindfulness sessions, all that kind of stuff, because that starts with an assumption that you know what's best for everyone in your organization. And it's great because you can tick a box and you can say you've done an event and all that kind of stuff, and you can shout about it a bit and you can be visible. But this would be, for me, number one. If you care about the well-being of your employees, if it's about engagement, if it's about well-being, whatever your responsibility, this has to be number one. And it will take a while, so you may as well start now. And that sounds a bit like a call to action, but I genuinely believe it. If you're not tackling this, then you aren't tackling the big issues around well-being. You're probably just working at the edges, working at the fringes, and not really getting to the heart of the issue.
Great last words to end the session.
Sorry.
No, I love it. I think we should be talking a little bit more about well-being and engagement also in in our future LinkedIn Lives. So as said, we have those LinkedIn Lives every week. You can find them. They're all published on the Hello Monday Club LinkedIn page. You can also go to the website and hellomondayclub.com and subscribe, because then you will get the invite in your mailbox and also a prompt when we go live. Obviously, you can maybe just see this as a pop-up in your LinkedIn Live. We also publish this recording on our YouTube channel. So there's lots of ways to keep on connecting with us. We love to share. We love to invite people to join this conversation. We have been having great conversations with our members and our clients. And I think as a community, we can learn and we can add so much value and to bring the change that we want to see in this world.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Pleasure as always, Angelique. Take care.
Bye-bye.